When people make mistakes, we often react in two different ways. There's compassion, which is, oh, I'm sure they didn't mean it. They probably have some reasons for what they did. Let's see what they are and give them a second chance. And on the other hand, you have judgment. And judgment is more about accountability. Oh, they did this awful thing. They need to be held accountable so they don't repeat their mistake again in the future. And both have value. But my issue is, oftentimes we either go to one or the other. Why can't we have both? I met a few
out there in the audience people
in my life. And even though no two people respond to the same situation similarly, everybody's different, there are usually similar ways people respond. There are people that are quick to get upset or easy to anger. There are people that are a little bit more relaxed, laid back, even though a little bit too much. And there's everybody else in between. But the thing is, there usually tend to be specific groups of people that you can kind of guess respond in similar ways. And one of these groups are, these people usually tend to be a little bit quick to judge. And when I mean quick to judge, I don't necessarily mean in a negative way. Sometimes they can be very sympathetic, they can be very empathic, they can understand your situation well and show you empathy. But there's a big if here, which is if you're not to blame. And what I mean by that is if they think you caused this situation on yourself, or you're the person that has the fault in this situation, they are very, very quick to be judgmental. And usually what they do is either they might tell you, oh, you kind of brought this one on yourself, didn't you? You could have seen this coming. Or you should have done this instead of this. This is how you should have handled this situation. And while sometimes their advice could be correct, they can be very correct because some of them are really, really smart people. That's why they assume a lot of things. But also it's probably not the best situation. On the other side of the spectrum, there are the completely non-judgmental people. And usually that's not all that positive either. It can be a positive or a negative. And you can see two different types of responses that end up from the extreme of the spectrum. One of them is what I like to call the uncaring asshole, which is usually someone who doesn't actually like to put a lot of effort into listening. And you can kind of tell this by telling someone something rough you're going through in your life. Oh, I had a fight with my parents, I had a fight with my girlfriend, boyfriend, someone close to me, with a close friend, whatever it may be. Their response will be very like dry, straightforward, empty. They're like, yeah, that's rough. So anyway, or they might go a little bit towards comedy, but give a very similar thing, which is a very common response is, it is what it is. And they throw their hands up at the sky. And near the end, they usually don't give any judgments, good or bad. They usually just try to give you the most straightforward answer and move on with the topic. On the other hand, from those two spectrums, you also get the completely afraid to pass any judgment type of people. Not mentioning any names, could be anybody. But usually those types of people, even when they do pass judgment, oh, maybe you shouldn't have done this, they usually feel extremely self-conscious. And after they feel self-conscious, they usually step it back. So maybe you could have done this better, but I'm sure you worked on it. I'm sure everything will work out fine. I'm sure you worked on that project really hard. I'm sure it'll turn out okay. And usually those people can end up being a lot of pushovers. Now, pushovers aside, I used to think that judgment and compassion are kind of opposites, two sides of a coin, so they never meet. But are there people like that can push you in the right direction while also being really compassionate? I always thought that people that give advice in a very nice way, they probably have some ulterior motive that they're not passing on. But I was wrong. And here, being able to give judgment and be compassionate at the same time requires three things. The first of which is pretty simple. Understand the other person's wants and motivations. The second one is a bit more tricky. Show empathy, either naturally and or intellectually. We'll get to it in a second as well. And the third one, which is my favorite, which is to be sneaky. Well, humans are complex creatures. So how do you actually learn what a person really wants? Well, that's the fun part. You just ask them. The whole method of this is just based on you getting the data from the other person. So let's assume a situation. So let's say for this situation, we have a generic, anxious, regular youth, Gary. And Gary Could have any type of issue. It doesn't matter, this still applies. Maybe he got into a fight with his family and he's a little bit angry at them. Maybe he's a student and he got a bad grade at a test. Maybe he's at work and he got into some trouble with his boss. Or maybe Gary's in jail because Gary just wanted to feed a cute crocodile some bagels. And the crocodile is a really, really good boy and he really likes bagels. So anyways, you can do anything as long as you just ask him about his emotions. You just ask and you listen. And after he gives you his specific answer, you reflect his answer back at him. That's basically the part where you can actually gain his motivations and his goals for what he wants to do. It's very simple. Usually you just ask people, but you have to listen carefully and repeat it back. Small note, when you're actually asking them this, it's very important that you don't say something is negative or positive. You just ask. They might ask you if something is right or wrong, but you just keep asking. You dodge that specific part. And the judgment actually doesn't come from you. We'll get to that in the third point. Anyways, keep going. Now we get to the second step, which is empathy. And it's basically very similar to reflection, but it needs to come in specific forms depending on what type of person you are. If you're naturally empathic, you'll kind of get a gist and feel out what the other person's feeling. If Gary got into a fight with his family, he might be upset, he might be depressed, he might be just like feeling down in general. And based on that, you can kind of feel what he's doing and reflect it. If he's angry, man, dude, that must have sucked. If he's upset or disappointed, maybe a little bit depressed, I'm really sorry, man, that must have been a real tough situation. You have to mirror his emotions. The issue is, some people don't have that natural empathy at a really high rate, like some people do. And the way you kind of do it is you have to imagine yourself in the other person's shoes, put yourself in that situation, like mentally think where are they in that specific moment, try to imagine what that must feel like, and based on that, do the best of your ability to kind of mirror it. If you feel like they are probably upset because they have a higher tone of voice, they're speaking a little bit more aggressively, then you can reflect it a little bit more aggressively just to match their energy basically. And from there, we can move forward with that. So where does being sneaky fit into all this? Matter of fact, what does it even mean? And here's the fun part. It's actually the judgment part is being sneaky. And the reason it's sneaky and the reason it's fun is because it's not actually your judgment, it's their judgment flipped onto them. And what I mean by that is for any situation to improve for a person, that person needs to have some responsibility inside of that situation. And since they have that, they need to already give it value of judgment upon themselves, either positive or negative or anywhere in between. But the fun part is you take that, you be compassionate while giving their judgment from themselves, and you use that to push them forward. And here's an example. So Gary was out for lunch with a friend of his, and his name doesn't really matter, so I gave a vague name just to explain my point. Dave. So Dave and Gary were out for lunch, and Gary was explaining an issue that he had at work with this really nasty person called John. And John had this experience, and here's how their conversation went. Yeah, dude, this guy at work, John, he's a real pain. Oh, this same guy from 2 weeks ago? And it's not just me, I'll tell you that. He does this with everybody. Damn, that sounds rough, dude. How'd that happen? So this guy comes in every day 15 minutes late. And he tells me that I'm late on an assignment that he gave me 2 days before the deadline because he forgot to send the email I asked. Can you believe this guy? He's unbelievable. Really? You had to go through all that? Oh, was it like a general problem at the company, or was it mainly with you and him? Yeah, dude, a whole bunch of us at work. Oh, that sounds like a problem a lot of people share at the company. Did you talk with the rest of the people that had this issue? Maybe you can figure something out together. Yeah, well, kinda. So we were talking, and what we were planning on doing is... Now, during this conversation, you might have noticed that we used a lot of step 1 and step 2, and a little bit of step 3 near the end. But what you might not have noticed is they've avoided something very specific. So here are your options. Which one do you think it is? What Dave actually avoided was being angry or bad-mouthing John. And you'll actually notice this. In everything he says, he doesn't say anything directly negative at John. Even though John's probably an asshole, let's be real here. But the point is, we're not trying to fuel Gary's rage here. We don't want him to go on a crusade. We're trying to get him to be responsible and take a good next step. So the way we did this is being supportive, being gentle with his pain and issues. And then based on that, we can move forward. And that's actually a very important part. You can't be overly aggressive with this ideology. And you might be thinking, doesn't this sound a little bit too complex? And nothing we can do about it. Just gotta go with it. Now let's see another example from a girl called Lila, who's mentioning some family troubles to her friend Tia. Yeah, go ahead and tell me. Mr. John doesn't seem like he's coming in. Thank God, I hate that guy. His classes are so boring. Every minute he's not here is a happy minute for me. You didn't seem really happy a minute ago. You want to tell me what's up? Tia, I've come to the conclusion that I'm adopted, because there's no way that woman's my mom. That's quite the leap. But how did you exactly get to this situation? She's just so annoying. Okay, calm down for a second and tell me what happened. Important part here. When someone's angry, don't tell them to calm down. That's probably the worst choice. She said I should be careful about becoming too much of a close friend with Julie. Like, what does she know? Julie, like senior year Julie? Yes, that Julie. Like I was saying. Like, what does she know about my life? Why does she keep trying to control everything? Wow, she really pissed you off this time, huh? What happened? She was asking about finals preparation, how I was studying with all that. I had mentioned Julie and I accidentally mentioned art school. And when she heard that word, all hell broke loose. Oh my god, yeah, that does sound like a lot of pressure, jeez. Yeah, my thoughts exactly. And Julie's mom had told my mom that Julie had started smoking. That's all she could talk about. Oh yeah, they know each other from the book club. So obviously I was really upset. And you know how I get when I get angry. So I told her to leave me alone and I slammed my door. With exams on top of all that? That sounds like an awful night. I'm sorry you had to go through all that. Thanks, Tia. Wait, there's just one thing I'm not getting here. I thought you don't like that Julie smokes. Well, yeah, but it's not about that. You know this. It's about her picking out everything for me. I want to pick my friends. I want to pick where I want to go and study. Like art, for example? Like art. Did you talk about that last night with your mom? Well, yeah, I tried. We tried, but you know how we always end up. We always end up fighting over it whenever we open up the topic, and it's usually just over something else completely. Not gonna lie, that sounds like a scary topic for the both of you. But like, maybe you can figure out a way for both of you guys to maybe like ease up on the arguing. Because I'm sure you probably are stressed out about it, which is why you're talking to your mom about it. And I'm sure she is stressed out, which is why she's talking to you. Maybe like find a time where you're more relaxed and then talk to her, you know? Probably easier said than done though. You're right. From this example, you might have noticed that actually the first step was a little bit lighter. We didn't ask all that much. While from the second and third step, we went a little bit heavier. And that's because when you know a person really well, maybe they're a close friend or a family member, you kind of already know the gist of their motivations. You kind of know what drives them, what they like, what they don't like, and stuff like that. So you can kind of not skip, but ease over that specific part. But very importantly, that does not mean you can ease up on reflection or mirroring or hearing them out. Because like, for someone to actually take in your advice, they need to feel like they have been heard first. And the way you do it, simple. You hear them. So asking them and like genuinely listening and reflecting back on them what they already said is probably the most important part of this. I can't stress this enough. Thank you for listening to my bad examples. I may be cringe, but I am free. In all seriousness though, an example is always the best way to understand. And if you can take anything away from this, I hope you take some of the main parts, which is showing a little bit more empathy, listening, reflecting a little bit more, and not going with your instant gut reaction judgment, but instead hearing out what is important to that person, and then making that thing more easily reachable. That's the entire thing. And I wanted to share this video with you, but strangely enough also with myself, because I'm only human, and it's very easy to explain stuff to people and forget about it yourself. I still get upset, I still yell, I still get mad, I definitely still get passive aggressive sometimes. But I don't have this shit figured out. No one does. We're all on the same path here together. So when we're all going down the same road, the least I can do is try to help people along the way, as well as help myself remember and recall every time I forget. That's why it's here. And I'll see you on the road.